Welcome to the first of several podcasts covering Big 12 football throughout the 2017 season. Today we're going to discuss the Week 2 and Week 3 games and kind of give a little bit of insight into what to maybe expect from the Big 12 Conference this year. Week 2, Oklahoma State faced South Alabama on the road, and Mason Rudolph was fairly impressive through 38 passes and completed 25 of them, netting him a total of 335 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Mike Gundy was really pleased overall with the performance. Oklahoma State only gave up 7 points defensively, and J.D. King, first-year running back for the Cowboys, had 8 carries and was able to average 8 yards per carry, netting him 64 yards. James Washington, the lead receiver and kind of the focus point of the Oklahoma State receiving corps, had 2 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. But the nice thing, of course, for Mason Rudolph is that arguably he has the strongest receiving corps and has the most depth at receiver in the nation, with more than one option to throw to. Obviously, he's got Jalen McCluskey, who's another. He's probably the second target, James Washington being the first, but it really kind of takes the pressure off of Mason whenever it does get into conference play. I think he'll find himself much more relaxed than in previous years, and not only because he has a very strong receiving corps, but also because he is a senior and he's a team leader. OU did get a very impressive win in Week 2 against Ohio State, and this was a really great ball game in the first half, and OU really took control in the second half. It was 3-3 game at the end of the first, and neither team they were moving the ball a little bit offensively. OU more than Ohio State, but OU did have 2 fumbles in the first half. They had no turnovers in the second. Ohio State had one thrown interception that was thrown by J.T. Barrett. Baker Mayfield was quite impressive, and Lincoln Riley had arguably, he was offensive coordinator under Bob Stoops last year and for many years previous until Stoops' retirement. But he was really impressive, and Baker, obviously Lincoln, being that he's been the offensive coordinator for several years, has a great relationship with the players and the other coaches, and I think he obviously drew up a pretty solid game plan. But I think what was more impressive is honestly, I don't think they tweaked a whole lot in the halftime or in the locker rooms at half, because OU was moving the ball. They just had those 2 fumbles. But they really executed their game plan in the second half, and Baker, 386 yards and 3 touchdowns is very impressive, especially against top 5 team in the nation. Dimitri Flowers was his top target with 7 receptions, 98 yards, and the final was 31-16, and it ultimately ended with a flag plant by Baker Mayfield in the middle of the Ohio State O. And, of course, that was a little bit – he caught some fire from the media. But, it was a big game. I kind of understand it. Ultimately it just comes down to don't let the cart get in front of the horse. OU and OSU, they're the top teams in the conference, and they're expected to do very well because – the rest of the conference, other than K-State and TCU are going to be the 3 and 4 spot in the conference. But other than that, I would say West Virginia's 3, K-State would be 4, TCU 5. But really, there's not a whole lot of strength in the Big 12 other than OU and OSU. And it'll kind of be it's nice now that we're going to have a Big 12 title game. Otherwise, I think it would kind of be hard to unless some upsets happen. In previous years, the Big 12 has really caught some heat for not having that conference game, that conference title game, since the old Big 12 split up. Nebraska left, Missouri left, Texas A&M, etc. So it'll be interesting to see how other teams do just besides OSU and OU, because it's great for Oklahoma State and OU if K-State and West Virginia can play really well. West Virginia does have 1 loss, but it was to a good Virginia Tech team, and K-State is 2-0 so far, and they're going to most likely be 3-0 after Week 3. But it'll be a major plus if they can pick their game up. And of course, Texas faced Maryland opening weekend and got beat, and Texas fans are quite aggravated. What's your take on the Big 12 right now?
Well, I think the Big 12 is they're decent. Obviously, OU and OSU are the major powerhouses and have been for the past 4 or 5 years. Before then it was usually Texas or OU running the table and having a good competing year and going to big time bowl games. But after Texas had some losing Mac Brown and getting Charlie Strong there and not competing at what they used to be, and that really doesn't help the look of the conference when you lose a big time year and going to big time bowl games. But after Texas had some losing Mac Brown and getting Charlie Strong there and not competing at what they used to be, and that really doesn't help the look of the conference when you lose a big time powerhouse out of Texas.
Not only that, but it doesn't help whenever you don't give the Texas coach a couple years to at least let him recruit.
My thing with Texas is they lost to Maryland, and all their fans and whatnot were just up in heat over Tom Herman and wanted him out of there. But to me, you're not going to get good
overnight. No,
overnight after one game. It's going to take a season to maybe 3 seasons before they ever start challenging a Big 12 title.
Here's the thing about Texas is whenever you bring in, the biggest thing that K-State has is obviously they used to be really good in the early 2000s, late 90s. Bill Snyder, he's been there a long time. He's the best coach in the Big 12. I have no doubt. He's got great experience. He runs his game plan is his game plan. He likes to milk the clock, and if he can run it on you, it's going to be an extremely long day. But Bill Snyder, the thing that he has that Texas doesn't and Baylor doesn't have now is recruiting. Kids come out of high school and they do want to go play for Bill Snyder. And the thing is whenever you have a coach for 3 seasons and get rid of him, and another guy comes in and then you get rid of him, or you're all up in arms about getting rid of him, he can't establish a relationship with his players. He didn't even recruit those players. So, you can't expect much from the University of Texas. Even though it's aggravating to Texas fans, there's nothing really that they can do about it. Charlie Strong, Charlie was a pretty decent coach, I think. He pulled off a couple upsets, or at least one upset there against OU, and, he's not bad. Obviously, they've lost some games that they shouldn't have, but it's also aggravating because Texas, the problem when Mac Brown left was they didn't have any discipline on or off the field. You had unsportsmanlike penalties. That was the thing, too, that killed Ohio State in week 2 was they had 9 penalties for 87 yards. That's something, that's almost a football field. That's ridiculous. You only had 2 penalties. So whenever it comes down to it, that's what costs you big-time games. That's what kills your momentum. That's what kills your offensive drives. And that's what kills, if you get them stopped on defense. That's the last thing he wants to give up unnecessary roughness or roughing the kicker or something like that, or even an offsides. You just got to have discipline. And that's something that Texas hasn't had, and that's something that OU and OSU and Kansas State all do have in common. But the big thing I think this year will be is what kind of challenge does West Virginia pose, and what kind of challenge does Kansas State pose? OU gets West Virginia at home. OSU has to go to West Virginia. That will be a great game later on in the season. But, hey, it's still a long ways away, and we've got a lot to learn. But it will be really interesting to see how the teams hold up, not only emotionally dealing with the media, especially OSU and OU, Mason and Baker both in the Heisman race. But, it'll be interesting to see how they hold up physically. So it'll be interesting to see how Week 3 goes, and we'll be back with it next week. Thank you for listening.